All right, we're live on YouTube, Hive Talk live on YouTube. A little post. It's not even post pick. The pick hasn't happened yet. I knew this would happen. I knew if I scheduled it at 9:30, I was just making a guess. I knew it was going to be before the pick, but I did know, David, that the Hornets would not pick at all. But that seems to be the case. The Hornets trading away the 22nd pick to Sacramento for Marco Belinelli, a name that you and I are familiar with from last offseason.
Exactly. I mean, what a difference a year makes, right? Because he was a big name free. Well, he was one of the first targets, right, that the Hornets were going after or rumored to be going
Mm-hmm.
after this time last year, and lost out to him to the Sacramento Kings, as we've seen. So a little bit different flavor though when you're leaving the Spurs as opposed to leaving the Kings. That's a different shade of black and silver. I don't know, black and purple or teal, what have you. It's
It's a
different,
it's a different shade of something for sure.
right?
Marco Belinelli, of course, made his name in San Antonio, coming off the bench in Greg Popovich's ball movement centered offense, averaged 9.4 points per game over his career. He's known definitely more for his offense and his outside shooting than anything, but he can handle the ball in the pick and roll. And when he's been at his best, David, he's been able to get to the rim and finish in the restricted area. But he hasn't done that the past couple of years, and he certainly didn't do it in Sacramento. And I think a lot of people who were initially upset at this straight-up trade, 22nd pick, going to Sacramento, the Hornets acquiring Marco Belinelli, I think people frustrated with the pick look at his statistics in Sacramento and say, wait a minute, he had a really, really down year in Sacramento, one of the worst three-point shooting percentages of his career. Overall field goal percentage was down, even though his usage percentage stayed pretty normal with his career output. I mean, how do you feel about the frustrations initially on this trade by Rich Cho and company?
It's understandable. Everyone wants something new and fresh on draft night. I mean, the unknown is a lot sexier than a known quantity, especially one coming off his worst season. But to me, I give him a bit of a pass on that. He was in Sacramento. It was a total disaster. It was a mess from day one. Before he got there, it was a disaster. So I give him a little bit of a pass on that. Like I said, coming off of the Spurs as opposed to coming off of the Kings, it makes a big difference. But he is known as a shooter, and as you mentioned, can play in that pick and roll situation as well. So I mean, that's something the Hornets are still looking to add, right? I mean, they made a transition last year into 3-point shooters, into offensive players, and they're still looking to add that. But that's the one thing I think that sticks out to me, Doug, is in a lot of the rumors we heard up leading to tonight were to make room to maybe keep the group intact as best they could, and now they're adding someone. Now, who knows what's going to happen after this? But is that something that surprises you that they not only didn't free up any room, but they brought someone else in?
Well, yeah, because and of course I knew this would happen, David. I went on ESPN 730 Charlotte earlier today, and I said, every $1 million will count for the Hornets as they look to free up cap space and retain part of their core. So of course they go out and spend $6 million to bring in Marco Bellinelli, and it's $6 million this next season, and then the season after that, because it was a 3-year deal that he signed with Sacramento. So that's definitely surprising to me, but it has to tell you something about how they feel about this upcoming offseason and free agency. Obviously, they feel like they're not going to be able to retain everyone. They're going to lose out either on Lynn or Lee or Marvin, or maybe a combination of several guys. And so I guess, if I'm trying to figure this out, and I think someone else mentioned this on Twitter as well, with Marco Bellinelli, you're getting a known quantity both in his salary cap number, so that you can factor that into your equation, but also he's a known quantity in terms of what they can expect his production to be. Now, of course, that production slipped last season in Sacramento, but and I tweeted this, I think that if you're the Hornets, you wanted him last offseason. You wanted him in your system because you believed that his skill set would complement your system and vice versa. So I don't know if you're overly concerned with, I know fans are, but I don't know if the front office is necessarily, and I don't know if Steve Clifford is concerned with that production last season because, you know, I think when you go out and look and say, I want this guy, you're not saying, I want this guy because of his performance on such and such a team. I think you're looking at him and going, I want this guy because he fits our system, and you're projecting out into the future years and saying, you know, he can be really good in the way we play basketball. So again, I'm trying to make sense of it, but at the same time, I'm a little disheartened by the move. I have to be honest, because again, you're locking down money, and you know, you're in essence sort of going against what the plan was, which was to retain some of these free agents and try to make another run at this. And, you know, Belinelli, again, he's an outside shooter, but he can run a little bit of the pick and roll, but he's not very athletic. I think the Hornets need to get athletic, and I think they need to look for two-way players. Marco Belinelli is not a great defensive player, so I don't think he helps in that arena. I just don't think that this fits a dire need or a need that showed itself in that series versus Miami. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of good points. I think we have to remember the Hornets were, I don't want to say they were frustrated, but they commented on how, you know, they couldn't get a whole lot of prospects to come in and work out for them, right, for this draft. I don't think there was a big desire to make a selection in this draft. Obviously, there wasn't if they made this deal.
I can see that. Yeah, I can agree with you on that.
And so, you know, for them, I think they had to say, hey, we know what this guy can do. We wanted him last year. We couldn't get him. And we take a chance to bring him in now. But I thought, but the second part of that, Doug, is this is the very first thing we've seen this team do, right? And there's so much up in the air and what they're going to try to do. So who knows if he's here? Who knows who else is here? That was the biggest thing for me. I just think, did they want to bring in another rookie? They didn't know who was going to be. A lot of the guys we mentioned last night on the show that they were interested in are already gone, right? Thonmaker gone, Valentine gone. So certainly there's going to be some of those guys available right now as we go through pick 18.
Listen, if Malik Beasley,
your boy Malik Beasley could still be there. But yeah, I think we saw it from last year.
I will cry.
We saw it from this team. Yeah, starting from last year, I think they're bringing in a known quantity, like you mentioned, does still have value for this team, especially a three-point shooter.
Can I just say something really quickly? First of all, I just realized that I have control over what the YouTube live people are seeing. I just figured that out. So they saw your face for a long time, which is probably better. You have a much better face than I do. But I also want to comment on the fact that both of us are wearing gray T-shirts.
I know.
And rocking the earbuds. I'm wearing the 2015 draft cap that Kaminsky put on. I was hoping that would bring some good luck in the draft, but they are not drafting, so I don't know. And we don't know that they're not drafting completely. The Hornets could certainly look to get into the second round. We won't be around to comment on that, at least tonight. We may send some tweets out and the like. But they could get into the second round. They worked out a lot of guys in Charlotte that are projected in the second round, including Malcolm Brogdon. A lot of people have commented Brogdon loves Charlotte. Charlotte loved Brogdon. There's also Karis LeVert. I mean, there are A.J. Hammonds, on and on and on. There are going to be some guys, too, that slip into the higher part of this second round, as we've already seen several teams make some trades or take some flyers on guys that weren't expected to go as high as they did. So some guys will fall into the second round. The Hornets could look to acquire them there. But just going back to the Belinelli acquisition, I think one thing that worries me, David, well, two things. First of all, it's now 2 straight off seasons where the Hornets have acquired a player and a contract, a multi-year contract from a team that didn't want that contract, and the player didn't play well for that team. Obviously, they got Hawes last year in a deal that sent Lance Stevenson to the Clippers. and Hawes was on a multi-year deal. The Clippers weren't satisfied with Hawes's production. You understood that deal, I think, from the Hornets' perspective because they wanted to move on from the Lance Stevenson situation. But this is a little different in that they could have kept the 22nd pick. It would have been $2 to $3 million in guaranteed money, about half of what they're going to end up paying Marco Belinelli. They acquire Belinelli, who George Karl, coach of the Sacramento Kings there for a majority of the season, stuck with Belinelli probably longer than a lot of people wanted him to. And finally, as they transitioned to the next regime, that those minutes went to Seth Curry. But you see the Hornets taking multi-year deals off of teams' hands. And that's not necessarily a position you want to see your team in, especially in a year where free agency is going to be crazy.
Yeah, unless they see value. As you mentioned a lot, Doug, the pickups they made last year were on guys that, maybe they saw something in those guys that would lead them to believe, hey, maybe had a down year, maybe due for a big year here. Took gambles, and for the most part, they turned out well, right? Hawes, certainly Marvin. I mean, even Lamb, the first part of the year. Even a guy like Nick Batum, right, who was hurt, had a down year in Portland. More of a known quantity, I think. More of a dynamic quantity, certainly, than Belinelli. But, maybe that's another situation here, too. The part you mentioned, though, about the salary discrepancy between what you would get on a rookie deal and what you would get with Belinelli, maybe someone like Brimbry, right, from St. Joe's, I think, was maybe a possibility there at 22.
From Charlotte. Grew up in Charlotte, at least. Went to high school up north, but from Charlotte.
Yeah, and that's a name. I don't know if we mentioned him the other night, but that's a guy that might still be there, that you would save a couple $1 million by having him on a rookie contract as opposed to this Belinelli contract. But again, I just go back to the fact that it really feels like they didn't want to even mess around with having to deal with picking. And then you look back on it, their success in acquiring players, for the most part, has come from trades. So if you want to look for the bright spot, I think you have to trust Cho in that area. Even though, I think the drafts, their failings in the drafts are sometimes overstated.
Yeah,
overblown.
Well,
because you look at the structure of the team, right? MKG, Cody, Frank, Kemba, all draft picks. So I mean, they have built their team through the draft. Whether you want to say that's good or bad is up to you. But I think they've had some success in building a core, which is not easy.
Well, let me read this tweet from at QC Sports Report. It says, at Hornets fans booed Zeller, hated the Batum trade, hated the Kaminsky pick, loved Lance, and loved PJ. Can we stop acting like idiot GMs and let Cho work?
Well, hey, Doug,
that's a funny tweet.
We asked last night what would be the worst case scenario when you would garner the most boos. I didn't see this one coming, but maybe.
Yeah, I wonder. We didn't, last year because we picked 9th, we did the live draft show, and so we had Katie, producer Katie, in Time Warner Cable Arena for the draft party. Yeah, I wonder what kind of reaction you had from that. At least people. Here's the thing: it was probably good because at least people knew, okay, we can go home. Because they would have had to stay until 10. I think that's pretty intense to ask fans to stay there till 10, even though they had Cody Zeller in the fan shop greeting fans. He was like, I got to get out of here.
He's probably like, I can go home too.
So yeah, I think you bring up some great points, David. I think that
I understand it though, Doug. Right? You want to have a glimmer of hope. You want to have something new and shiny on draft night, right?
Well, yeah, I think if you're a fan, you want to, and I think a lot of fans thought, okay, 22nd pick, you can afford, you don't need somebody to play immediately. You can afford to send somebody to this shiny new D-League team that you're going to have. You can draft a project player. Here's the problem. So the Hornets and the Bobcats before them did not have a great track record of player development. And certainly getting the D-League is step one in turning that it's only step one. Like, I feel like that whole developmental atmosphere is not quite there yet. And we've already chronicled some of the early struggles that they're having getting that D-League team, the staff together, the coaching staff. And I just think that the team is not necessarily ready to take on a big draft and stash type project, and certainly not for $2 or $3 million guaranteed over a couple of years.
And there goes your boy Malik Beasley.
Oh, thank goodness! Oh,
you love it.
Gosh.
Okay, let's restart it. Let's restart the show.
Good luck in Denver, man. I'll be cheering for him. I swear. I just love the kid. I'm sad that he's not going to be in Charlotte, but I mean, I started doing my draft research, and I went through a couple of guys, and I'm just watching tons of film, and I stumble on Malik Beasley, and I'm like, oh my God, because I don't watch a ton of college basketball. I stick to the pros. I'm so dedicated to covering the Hornets and analyzing Hornets and NBA basketball. I don't get a lot of time to watch the college game, but boy, I mean, the more film I watched on Malik Beasley, the more I loved him. And it's sad that he dropped to 19 because of the stress fracture injury in his leg that they had surgery as a precaution, and it hurts him, and he falls down. But I mean, they're showing the highlights on ESPN now. I mean, the kid is just amazing, gets to the rim, no problem, can drive. He's a little short, but I think he can develop an NBA ready body. And I mean, he's just going to be
heck
great
of an athlete. Heck of an athlete, Doug. And the other thing we mentioned last night, the wings, the free agent wings this offseason are pretty shallow. So you've got KD, you've got Toom. Right? I mean, I think those are maybe your top three out on the list in front of me. But that could be another thought in the Hornets' mind when they're looking at shoring up some of those wing positions, at least on offense. We'll hear what Cho has to say about it. I just think that, to me, if you're going to draft somebody at 22 and you're going to stash him in Greensboro, maybe you go ahead and take a shot on something that and you're going to be able to plug Belinelli in next year.
Well, and here's the thing I think you have to understand about Belinelli and his performance in Sacramento, and comparing that to what he'll be asked to do in Charlotte. I just don't think he'll be asked to do as much in Charlotte. He'll have a lot more shooting around him. And when you look at his time in Sacramento, he was one of the few players on the team that could shoot long distance. And you had a point guard in Rondo who obviously struggles to shoot, and there weren't a ton of shooters in Sacramento. So he had to carry the load, and maybe that affected his efficiency numbers. I think it will be interesting to hear what Rich Cho has to say, what Coach Clifford saw in Belinelli that made them want to pursue him last offseason, and then to hear from Belinelli himself and try to figure out what went wrong, because he'll have to, the media will get a chance to speak to Belinelli, and I think he'll have to answer somewhat for that down year, just like Hawes did. And I thought when I spoke to Hawes on Media Day last season, he was extremely open about the struggles, and he talked about in an in-depth way about someone knew about that led to some of his struggles. And, he didn't have crazy great year last season, but he did everything he was asked to do, Spencer Hawes did, and he played a significant role for the Hornets organization. And I really think, I'll be honest with you, David, there were a lot of factors that led to the Hornets not being able to close the deal against Miami. But I look back and go, man, if they had the ability to get Hawes in there late in that series and get his physicality underneath, it could have possibly turned the series around. But unfortunately, he was one of the many players that suffered late injuries for the Hornets.
Yeah, I mean, 7-game series too, right? So every little bit helps. I don't think you'll hear Cho or Clifford or anyone in the Hornets organization say they are wiping away the last season for Belinelli because he was on the Kings. But it was a mess. I mean, it really was. So I give him a bit of a pass there, and you got to hope that he reclaims some of that Spurs magic. And you mentioned it, Doug, ball movement. Spurs, no one does it better than that. So maybe the Warriors now. But at their best last year, the Hornets were moving the ball crisply and efficiently, and guys were prospering. And that's where Belinelli is going to do his best work.
All right, we'll close there. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Hive Talk Live. We'll talk more about this draft on there, and we'll be back on the podcast to talk more about free agency, about Belinelli, and more of those decisions. Again, we'll post those show times on Twitter. It's going to be kind of spot coverage this summer as we get prepared to cover next season. Thanks so much for joining us on YouTube. This was a little bit of an experiment. Obviously, we're in our home studios, but we'll be trying this a little more throughout next season as well. So thank you, David, from joining us from your home studio as well.
Absolutely. Draft night. We're on the clock. Well, not quite.
Still
not
a little
quite.
bit to go. Well, Woj is probably broken who the Sacramento Kings have taken already. But what do you think? What do you think of that real quick? What do you think of that vertical draft show? I liked it. I had ESPN on mute.
I love it. It was a no-brainer now that you think about it, right? I mean, Woj has been basically broadcasting the draft from his own Twitter account for the last 3 or 4 years, and they took it to the net. They took it live, so it worked out. And they've got a good crew. Our guy Bobby Marks, friend of the show, is on there, so it's good stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we've got a great crew. We'll get back with Justin Thomas and talk more Hornets basketball coming up. Until then, thank you so much for watching us here on YouTube Live. Enjoy the rest of the draft, Hornets fans. Let's swarm Charlotte.